So, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this web talk today. I'm going to start with a couple of words about Sofia Revit User Group until maybe some of the people who are willing to join today are dealing with the technical issues they might have during the join. So, uh, you should be able to see my screen here where I'm just trying to grab your attention to our website, where you could find all the information about our events, about Sofia Revit User Group as a whole. And the important part here are the links that you have here on the bottom of the homepage, where you could find links to our Facebook group, our LinkedIn group. Also very important, our YouTube channel, where all the recordings of our uh, live or web meetings are hosted, so you could watch on demand every meeting that we had in the past. I hope there you could find some very interesting information about uh, any topic that might be of interest of you. And I cannot miss here the sponsors and our supporters, without who we won't be able to continue what we're doing. So a moment to show all of them and thank them again. So even if you are not one of them, you could just write to us if you want to start helping, and we could tell more about how this could happen. Now I'm gonna pass the word to our presenter today, Allister, to introduce himself and tell us more about the exciting topics that we have today. So, Allister, to you now.
Okay, amazing. Thanks very much. Can you see my screen okay? That's showing the title sheet okay?
I think everything is okay. At least I can see it. So I assume that everybody else could see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, and also
Brilliant.
just a quick reminder: if anybody has any question, just put them in the chat, so uh, we could answer them during the presentation or afterwards. So don't hesitate to ask your questions.
Yeah,
You
amazing.
can
Yeah,
continue.
so
Thank you.
I'm just going to, I can't see. Can I see the chat when I'm trying to see the best way to see the information?
I've got it open, so if there is a question, I'm gonna
Yeah, yeah, that sounds
join.
good.
So. Mhm.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate that. It's great to be here. Super happy to talk to you a little bit about what I've been doing over the last 18 months. If you do have questions, just ask. Happy for you to just interrupt me essentially, and I'll do my best to answer. But I will stop throughout the presentation just to make sure if anyone has any questions. So I'm just going to do. I'm not going to take up a full hour of your time. It should be about 40 minutes or so. I think just running through the agenda, but I'm going to talk a little bit about me and what I've been doing. I'm going to talk about construction technology and how that's growing, talk about some of the key issues and emerging areas that I'm seeing. And then there's a case study on generative design where I've done a deep dive into this area. And then talk a bit more about 6-week technology strategy that I've been doing with clients at the moment. So it's quite a lot to get through, but yeah, it should be hopefully quite interesting. So this is me and my journey that I've taken over a period of time. I have transitioned from being a full-time normal architect into BIM management, and then I was a head of technology in an architecture firm, and that covered everything from hardware, software, infrastructure, processes, BIM, things like that. And then I moved to another company where I was employed originally as a BIM manager, but ended up doing kind of software product management, which is where we were building software and integrations for Revit, primarily for our clients. And then I set up Add Automated Data-Driven Design in 2023, and I've been doing that since, which has been an interesting journey. And you can see some of the examples of my work here in terms of, I did a lot of work on schools. primary schools and secondary schools, but also just messing around with technology like 3D printing, laser cutting, and obviously more latterly, we're looking at AI and AI rendering tools and things like that. So the mission that I've given myself for AD is to essentially help construction professionals to be better, faster, more profitable, but also more sustainable and kind of, better run and more efficient. Just trying to help companies where they are at the moment to move them forward and be more effective. We're a very kind of wasteful industry in terms of how we do things, lots of manual workflows and lots of fragmentation and things. So it's trying to bring that technology that's out there into the industry to increase the way that we produce all the information that we do. And this all started out of me. Essentially, I did a BIM Masters in 2015, and as part of that, I did a thesis, and I was interested in data-driven design, and I started collecting software that I saw around the AEC, architecture, engineering, construction industry. And I've been putting that into a database ever since. So probably 2 or 3 years ago, there was about 500 different pieces of software in there. There's now 1,600 and more in there. And this is it's an Airtable, but it's a central resource that I've been using to help with consultancy work, but also to keep up to date with what's out there. And I'm looking to try and make this a bit more accessible to people. So keep an eye on this for the next few months because I will trying to build a small platform where you can access all of this data quickly and easily. But it's all categorized, there's different tags, and there's all these different software in there with different descriptions and work stages that it works in. And from that, I decided that I'd like to share this idea to a wider audience, not as part of a closed database, but as an open marketplace for software. So the idea was for software companies, if they wanted to reach their ideal client type, they could sell software through here. And also for people like you who are trying to find the solutions, you can go to this website and start to explore and see the different software that is on there. And we've got nearly 250 products on there now. There's over 100 different categories, which allows you to explore all the software in different ways. We've got some real kind of, I think, kind of marquee kind of software companies like Rayon on here and Planoly and Beam from MKSD Tech and Cope and things like that. So there's a big range of different software on there, and the idea is to try and give you access to those quickly and easily. So the web address is here, so please have an explore of that and come back to me with any comments that you may have on it. The idea is to try and progress this further and look at different different things that could be sold through there. So we all create a lot of things in our day-to-day roles, and actually we could sell more of that or monetize more of that, whether it's images or software or plugins, or if it's actually reports and information, we could share a lot more with the people out there, and this marketplace potentially could become a central location for that. In addition to that, we work with two other people, one based in the US and the other in Australia, and we created AEC Tech Jobs. So the idea behind this was to help people who may be interested in coding, who may be, developing their own tools, move into developing software. And we have been publishing roles on there over the last year. Yeah, it's been just under a year we've been doing it now. We usually have about 400 to 500 roles on there at any one time. And again, it has some real marquee companies on there. So if you want to work for Autodesk or Chaos or Rayon or some of these companies, there are lots of roles there, and there's lots of other things as different organizations as well, more startups, early stage software who are looking for specialisms, and it covers different roles like product management, computational designer, but also sales, marketing, customer success, as well as software developers, front end, back end, UI, UX, things like that. We're trying to create this environment that allows people to, find to essentially transition from being, let's say, an architect into being someone who works on the software side. So I share roles on there every week. So if you follow AEC Tech Jobs on LinkedIn, you'll see that. or if you follow me or Stephanie or Bragan, who you can see at the bottom of the screen here, we're constantly sharing, updates and new jobs and resources through here. So the idea is, yeah, to help you kind of move into maybe something which is a bit different from what you do currently. And from that, we are now working with some of those content companies that are on the marketplace to either do kind of social media posting or try and help them reach their ideal customer profile, strategy, positioning, and things like that. So this is another thing that's kind of grown out of that, which is quite interesting. And we're working with a few different companies at the moment. So in terms of construction technology software, the the software market is going to double by 2030. So from here, it's saying grow from 6.5 billion to 13 billion pounds a year. And this just demonstrates how quickly and how fast software is growing, how high the demand is for that, but also how many new solutions and tools are out there for the AEC industry. And what this kind of means is that for professionals, they kind of need to keep up, and that's quite difficult because you have day-to-day roles. You're trying to keep going and deliver what you might need to there, but also there's all this technology which is coming out, and we can see that there are advancements of tools in certain areas. So generative design is a really big area I've seen a lot of development in. AI clearly is a massive area that is growing and changing, and new resources are coming out every day on this, it seems. But then collaboration software and interoperability between the different platforms is also areas that are needed to be kind of kept up to date with. Um, and what I'm seeing is that, professionals feel overwhelmed with all of this, which is why the marketplace exists. It's trying to help people find things and manage it, based on their project requirements, and trying to stop the overwhelm of all this new stuff that's out there. So with AI, we know it's, emerging. There's loads of different applications for this, and it is going to change the way we work over time. So this is just a diagram from Keir Regan Alexander. He was doing a kind of assessment for what architects would want to use AI for. And you can see here that bids and knowledge management are kind of the two key areas. Also, technical knowledge. We all have loads of data and information that we've built up over time in our practices, and we don't leverage that very well, and AI could actually help with it. And then you can see on here design review processes, practice management, comms and PR, public relations, sustainability. There's a load of different areas here. And obviously, interestingly, at the bottom of this, it's about people is, lowest because we still, I think, want human interaction and human managers to look after people. And also with finance, yeah, it's just being careful with that. So it's just an interesting kind of exploration of what AI can look like and how it could be applied over time. So I'm going to pause very quickly. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Just while I have a very quick pause
So
there.
far, no questions, so you could continue.
Okay, all right, great. Okay.
Thanks.
So one of the things I did over the last year was it's like, okay, it's great, we've got all this software, but how do we assess it? How do we actually look at software and understand how good it is relative to something else? And I started doing research around this, and one of the things that came out of it was the open letter to Autodesk, which was essentially a cry for help from the industry to say, look, we really need better software. Please update Revit. Please make it better. Please develop it so that it meets our requirements and stop charging us so much money. And Autodesk essentially panicked a bit, said they were listening, and then have done absolutely nothing around this. So we know that Revit is fundamentally very similar to how it used to be. I started using it in 2008. I can still use it now. It's, fundamentally exactly the same piece of software. They're not developing it for very good reasons. They make loads of money out of it. There's no need to, and that's just the way they deal with it. But this letter actually resulted in something quite valuable, which is the future AEC software specification. And I can put a link to this if you want it, but essentially search future AEC software specification. And it was a group of architects who came together and said, actually, let's develop what we want to see from software in the future. And you can see at the top of the screen, there's 10 criteria in this, which are start to define what we want to see. So things around data, things around access across use cases, personas, locations, designing in context and scale, AI, offsite construction, sustainability. They all have a nice summary of what should be in there and what we want to see from software. And what I thought was actually you could build a software assessment based on this framework. So I've created a very simple Excel spreadsheet. It's in Google Sheets, but it's a very simple sheet, which allows you to then score software against that using a 1 to 5. So 1 is not very good, 5 is very, very good. Um, this is a slightly earlier iteration, this image here, but I've simplified it down. So there's only 3 questions per category. So there's 30 questions overall. And then what you can do is have a weighted scoring for this as well. So when you've got all the different 10 criteria, it may be that offsite construction is super important for you. So that would have a higher weighting than maybe sustainability, for example. And I've used this for, I did an assessment of issue management software last year, and I also did one on generative design, which we'll come on to this year. But it allows a quantitative way of assessing software and being able to compare against them quite simply, really. You're able to download this off the marketplace if you would like to. There's a link just at the bottom here. So I'll stay on here just for a second, but you can, yeah, go there. You can download this and you can start using it. There's no charge. It's free. The idea is to share a resource for the industry to essentially upskill and allow us to assess this software quickly and easily. If you want that link later on, please ask me and I'll send that with you. So, in terms of the key areas that are merging within software, there are a few different things. So, generative design, which essentially is used at early stage feasibility and viability stage for projects, is using algorithms and logic to allow you to develop proposals based around constraints. So you'll say, I need it to be this high, it needs to have this many units, it needs to be this unit mix. I want it to be this typology, a courtyard building, for example, or a strip building or whatever, a tower. And you can put in all of the constraints and it will then generate outcomes from this. And it's a very powerful way of actually doing early stage feasibilities and getting data out of that really quickly and easily. Whereas what we do, or what I did before, was 2D blocks moving around the place, maybe 3D stuff. But it was very manual and very sort of time consuming. Whereas generative design starts to say, actually, we can use the power of computation to actually increase the quality of and speed of what we're producing. There's a huge amount of work going into rendering and concept software around visualization, and clearly this is being augmented with AI now. So many companies are obviously using AI to create this imagery and start to increase what they do. And every week on LinkedIn, I see a new AI rendering model or a new tool or something. There's so many of them out there. It's quite overwhelming. But this is one of a key area for architects, quite reasonably, that they want to see their designs and use for their work. So this is developing pretty quickly now. On the other side of that, I've put down here there's kind of AI, but there's AI for mundane tasks and AI for design. So some of those mundane things are knowledge management. So Howie and Cogrum, you do minute note taking and request for proposal bids. And they've also just launched an email management system as well. Howie, their idea is to be able to interrogate all of the details and all the drawings that you have in your office and be able to access those quickly and easily, and then use that knowledge on future projects. And then there's nice things like AI for design, which things like layout, which will do internal layouts for you, and stable diffusion, Midjourney for rendering and things like that. And there's so many opportunities to use these tools for the greater good and for our design work. And AI is going to obviously be augmented into so many other areas that we can't foresee that well at the moment. But it seems that agentic AI and your own personal AI assistant is likely to be the next big step. And I think ChatGPT or OpenAI launched theirs this week. Um, Collaboration software is and kind of coordination between different people is another thing. So I've put Rayon on here because it's a really neat, nice 2D drafting tool, all web-based, but allows you to collaborate live in one environment. So if you're doing 2D work, it very quickly asks the questions, why are you using AutoCAD? Why are you using Vectorworks when actually a web-based collaborative portal is going to be so much more effective? And it creates really beautiful drawings, which is kind of from an architectural perspective, really desirable. There's obviously other software like Speckle, which they've got two things they do now. One is to do with connectors. So if you want to connect between Rhino and Revit and Navisworks and Rhino and all these other things, that they've got all these different connectors that allows you to connect between that software and actually streamline your workflows. And it's incredibly powerful. So I'm really impressed with what they've built. And they also have now kind of like a Teams offering, which allows you to host models and information online and work more collaboratively. It's not something I've used yet, but it's they're kind of paid for thing, whereas all the connectors were free, which is pretty amazing. And then there's other collaboration software, Zipboard, which does markups between consultants. Again, it's all web based. And also Layer, they do some really nice stuff about room data sheets as well, and lots of other things for architects. And the idea is that we're kind of trying to save time, be more collaborative, and work in an interoperable way. Sustainability probably doesn't get as much attention as I'd like it to get, but there are a lot of software out there for that, whether it's measuring embodied carbon or life cycle. There are all these different software solutions out there which start to help with that. And this is, from my database, and the idea is that um, accessing all this software is what's what I'd really like to try and help and promote. So this is available on the marketplace. I can't remember if it's free or not. I think there's a slight charge for it just to kind of access it. But let me know if you are interested. I can send it across to you. And then there's kind of organizational management, so practice management, or even just project management itself is there's some software which can really help us. Many architects are still using Excel to manage resourcing and fees and invoicing and cash flow, and it seems a bit mad. And there's lots of different software out there which can help automate that and make sure that it's more accurate, better forecasting and things like that can be brought into it. Um, okay. So any questions or all okay?
We're okay for now. Maybe in the end, people could
Okay.
add their questions. Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to talk a bit more about generative design because I did a post on LinkedIn last year and it got loads of interest from people. So I thought, well, okay, this is an area that architects or are keen to have a look into. So I wanted to do this a deep dive into it, and this is kind of a pathway that I followed for this. Apologies if you can hear the dog in the background. The problem we had, or we have as architects, is doing feasibilities is really time consuming, and commonly we don't get paid for it. So one of the things that generative design can do is speed this up, make it much more effective, and actually start to allow people to be to interrogate their projects at that super early stage to make sure it's viable, that clients are going to be able to use it, and it's going to actually make sense in the long term. And a lot of architects do yeah, I'm going to do a feasibility, get through all of that, and unfortunately, it then results in it's not a viable project, for example. So it's quite important to actually get all this stuff right from the outset. And these tools are starting to really help us at an early stage. So the definition for generative design does change. This definitely isn't generative AI. Generative design is where you start to explore innumerable possible permutations of a solution to find the best option. So the idea here, it's about algorithms, it's about constraints, it's about having control over it. AI doesn't really come into it. Some of the generative design tools do leverage AI as part of what they do, but predominantly they are computationally focused, and that's what they come out of. So the industry has kind of said, okay, the solution to this is generative design, and I've got a list of 40 different software tools within this area, which shows you how A lot of companies are like, yes, we're going to attack this issue, which I think is great because there's lots of options and they all do work in different ways. But it also means there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of overlap, and there's probably too many tools in this area now, and it's a bit unwieldy for people. So the idea behind this report was to say, actually, let's try and simplify that a bit and make it easier for people to choose the right software for them. And what we kind of came up with is looking at a review of all those different software in detail using that assessment criteria. This is just kind of highlighting that issue around is it generative design with AI or not? And some of these software do have AI as part of them. So Finch in particular is very much based around having AI based inside of it. Whereas HiPar, for example, when I spoke to Anthony there, he was kind of like they have a light touch, a little bit of machine learning helps you automate the layouts of rooms. So people have used it in slightly different ways, and that's where we're trying to um, communicate that to a wider audience, basically. Um, I think why it matters, why it's really important, is it gives us data-backed results. So rather than us um, essentially guessing or trying to create something and counting and things. It's actually the amount of data you get back from this software is actually incredibly detailed and really helpful. So that should reduce rework and design changes. It should allow clients to make better informed decisions about their projects. And it should allow architects to win more work because they can do things faster. I did meet with an architect earlier this year, and they're like, "It's great that we can do more," but they said at the moment there's not enough work out there, so so their struggle is actually getting more work in. And I know that across the UK in particular, it's been quite a flat period over the last couple of years in terms of projects being moving forwards because of interest rates and other kind of complex issues. But the hope is that more work is going to start to be kind of pushed out over the next few years, particularly in the residential area, which is where this software would really come in to help and support. Um, so this is just a quick example, but the way that it kind of works is you usually identify a site, create boundary, put constraints on there, uh, understand what typology you might be using, put in the different access points for the site, and then the software can then go through iterations of options that allow you then to start to streamline them and understand which ones are best for you. And you can then augment them or filter them by the most appropriate options based on your own knowledge, skill, intuition, and understanding of the requirement. So the computer's not doing anything for you as such. You're still the final decision maker as part of that process, but it just starts to make that process much more streamlined and faster. And a lot of this came out of a project I did a few years ago for a client where they wanted us to assess four different pieces of software for generative design. And you can see them here. So it's ArchiStar, Schema, I think it was called Creo back in those days, and SpaceMaker, which is now Forma, and SiteSolve. And what I used to here was an assessment criteria, used Power BI to communicate those outcomes, and then obviously used the software as well to kind of see how they worked. And in this particular instance, we decided to use SiteSolve, and that meant that the client came back to us and said, okay, we're going to use SiteSolve. View City, which is an urban planning tool, essentially owns SiteSolve. We want to do an integrated project, and we want all of that to be augmented into Revit. So the idea was that they could identify a site, understand all the constraints for that site from a planning perspective. They could then develop a scheme really quickly and easily using SiteSolve, and from there export that out into Revit and what we say instantiate all of the unit types that are just blocks in SiteSolve as detailed Revit models from their catalog of apartment types. So we built essentially a Revit plugin to allow them to do that. And from their perspective, it was great because they could then do very high level feasibility studies on their sites, understand what the capacity was of that without having to go out to an architect. and say, can you do this for me? So from their perspective, they were a housing association, it saved them time and money. Now, obviously, there's a big challenge for architects with their clients are doing that instead of them. But this is definitely a thing in the industry, in that a lot of generative design tools are not necessarily trying to sell solely to architects. They may be selling primarily to real estate clients and developers as well. So, from a perspective of being an architect, if your client is doing some of this stuff themselves, that's a bit of a kind of an ownership risk of the design process by saying, okay, they're going to go away, do this. Does that mean that architects should just wait for their clients to do that, or should we be adopting these tools much faster ourselves so that we are, saying to clients, we'll do that. We know how to do it. It's really fast. We're really good at this, and actually taking ownership of that. So, yeah, there is a call to action, I think, here is that architects need to engage with some of these tools, because if they don't, real estate clients and developers will do it instead, because we're all looking to make essentially marginal gains across everything. So the business case for architects is save time, do it faster, save money. So obviously reducing rework and design errors, increasing revenue because you can do more projects in a shorter space of time, and obviously differentiate themselves from other architects who are not doing this. So there is a market reason for this. And as I say, there are so many options out there now. That's why it's quite an exciting time to potentially adopt some of these tools. And as part of what I did was I've reviewed all of these software to help guide the industry in that what they can do. So as I say, this is the scoring process. So you can see here we've got 3 questions per category, and then you've got the weighting here. So for this one, I kept the weighting all the same because all of the categories I think are equally important for this type of software, but it will be different depending on what that is. And then, yeah, from this, I was able to get a kind of a scoreboard of who's performing really well and who's performing less well against that criteria. So it doesn't necessarily mean that one at the bottom isn't going to work for you. It just means against the future AEC software specification, some of them are performing better than others. And that's one of the key findings of the report, essentially. So what I did was I did a far too detailed assessment of the software. So I built this report and it's got 380 pages in. It's so in depth, it's like ridiculous. But basically, I looked at all the software. I've put them into different categories. So some of them are for like master planning, some of them are for like buildings and massing, and then some of them for like internal works. And then I looked at the scoring methodology and how that works, and then did an overview of the software, and then I did a deep dive into about 20 of them. And yes, you can see here we're looking at what their capabilities are, what their maybe the limitations are as well. And yeah, this took quite a while to do, so it's very in depth, but hopefully incredibly useful for the industry. And then as part of that, I started looking at kind of when you would use some of these tools, workflows, what exports they might have from them. So you can think about interoperability. I've put all of the different or some of the different workstage models that here, so RIBA in the UK, AIA, and things to see how that kind of works. And some of these tools can be used across quite a few different stages. Some of them are going to be shorter and have less usage essentially. And then I started looking at the costs of each of those software. So some of them are incredibly like huge value for money, like really, really affordable, and others are much, much more expensive depending on them. So, some of these are for very unique um, categories such as hotel design. But you can see here that there's essentially a price point for every architect to actually start to engage with these tools. And then I was looking at workflows and saying, actually, if you used, a few of these different tools, so Rhino, Revit, Plan Finder, what would the cost of that workflow be? Similar with SnapTrude, Revit, Morphis, Revit, what the cost of that workflow would be. So the idea is to kind of explore this in more than just a quantitative way, is actually look at this in the round and say, actually, what does that look like for people? And what I did was I created this kind of this spreadsheet which just has all of the an overview of all of the software basically. And what I'm going to do is, yeah, so what I've got here is you can access that spreadsheet now if you want to. There's a link here. I'll try and put it in the chat at the end. So if you want to access that spreadsheet, you can, and you can see all the kind of all the software in there and sort of the key metrics for that. In a way, I've kind of given away more than I probably should have in this in that document. But the idea is to lead to, if you want to find out more, then you can buy the report, or there's a taster report, which is lower cost. It's only, I think it's like £35 or something, £40 for people to buy, whereas the full report is 350. But either way, in terms of amount of time it took me to put this together, they're both really good value for money. So have a look and yeah, come back to me. So yeah, so this is that report here. So it's a PDF document. And yeah, it has 380 pages. It was about 3 months of work. I think it took me about 6 weeks full time. And next time I would definitely do a much sort of lighter touch with all of this. But it's an incredibly useful resource, I think, for the industry. And I want to follow this with other ones going forward so that you can start to have a library of these resources. So when you want to find out information, you don't have to do all that research yourself. I've done at least 80%, if not 90% of that work already. Um, Something else I've been doing over the last few months is that we've been looking at workflow webinars, and the idea is to look at a number of different tools and how they work together as part of a workflow. So you can see here we looked at Finch, Revit, and Forma, and there's really nice kind of workflow there where they all work together, and that's on YouTube. And we also looked at Giraffe and Fenestra, which is a AI rendering tool. We did that last week, and that was a really great little session. Giraffe's an amazing piece of software. If any of you are using kind of SketchUp or even Revit for early stage design work and feasibilities, have a look at Giraffe. It's really excellent. It's a really cost effective tool, and it will save you so much time and produce information in a beautiful way. And then we did look at another one. One of the first ones was Hectare, which is a generative design tool, Xfigura and Foveate. We're looking at design into rendering and then into a presentation mode as well. So they're quite fun sessions. I'd love to get your feedback on them because they're quite good. Trying to keep them really pacey, so we just go through things quite quickly for the first half hour, and then have questions at the end. But the link is here if you want to see that. It's yeah, any feedback on that would be great. And then the last thing that I've kind of been doing over the last few months is start to take all that knowledge that I've kind of got and start to help practices with their technology strategy and how they move forward. And I've built a 6 week technology strategy program. I've just finished it with one client. I've got another one starting in September. And the idea is to say, okay, where are you now? What does that look like? What's in your software stack? What hardware are you using? What infrastructure? What processes? Workflows? Um, Everything basically is part of a practice to be able to say, right, in order to get yourself ready for AI adoption, these are the things that you need to start looking at. And this is a very simple kind of diagrammatic thing, but we just say, okay, what software do you have around all of these different areas? So from my sort of work, these are sort of the key areas that a practice needs to have in consideration. So sustainability, your modeling software, your graphical software, excuse me, your visualization software. And across all of these, you should be able to say, yes, we've got one of these, or have a reason why you're not using one of them, or have a plan to adopt it as and when is needed. But these are sort of the key sort of areas. And then from that, you can start doing a gap analysis. And this was someone we did last year for a practice where these were all the areas where they had software. We identified all the areas where they didn't have software, which showed gaps in maybe what they're doing. And then we start to prioritize which ones were really important. So automation up front, they wanted to look at looking at their modeling software as well, and then looking at how they capture graphics and their hand drawings, and then generative design, and then AI as well. So you can create a roadmap essentially for that adoption once you know where you are. And what we've done is create this is just a sheet. So from the ad marketplace, all of that software is on this sheet. So it's a really useful way of kind of going, okay, this is where you are now. Let's take all that knowledge from the marketplace, look at these options here, and start to say actually which ones are really important and which ones could you start to adopt? So if it's generative design, here's some options. If it's collaboration software or rendering or AI. So we're starting to kind of build up this approach, I suppose, where we start helping practices with their requirements. And I'm really interested to see where this goes because I think we could really help a lot of practices. And this is just a very simple diagram. It's a simplified version of my full diagram for workflows where that you can say, okay, what do you use for early stage? What do you use for modeling? How do you export, connect? What's your main BIM authoring software? What's your export? So it's a very simple diagram, but there's a much more kind of involved one that I've done for this. But then you can also see in here we've got things for like markups, online collaboration, AI for design, AI for manual tasks, presentation. So we're starting to build up a picture with these simple diagrams that a practice can start to understand, okay, this is where we need to go, or this is where we could actually augment what we have currently. And then that could be put into a program where you say, okay, up front, we want to look at this next quarter. And then from there, you can move into other things because you can't do everything all at once. It's overwhelming. And so the idea is you need to break it down into digestible phases after that. And then from that, we create this lovely report, which can allow the users to go away and say, okay, I know where we are, I know where we're heading. We've got a real kind of key plan and a strategy for that. And they're really enjoyable processes to go through from my perspective. But then, as I say, it has all your hardware, software, infrastructure, processes, AI approach, workflows, a program, recommendations. We've also done things like change management plans, training strategies, and implementation strategies as well to go with this. So it helps practices to feel like they've got all the tools they need to move to the next step. I think this is the very last thing that I was going to say. So I do have a newsletter. So if you are keen to find out or keep up to date with what's happening, it's called Additive, Building the Digital Architect. The idea is to just give you updates on a weekly basis of what's out there, what tools are there, giving you free resources like access to the cheat sheet and to the assessment criteria, things like that. And those slides that were in here, these ones, they are accessible from, I can't remember which newsletter, it was a couple of weeks ago that I put them all in there as well. So you can download those and access them if you want to. But yeah, it'd be lovely to have you sign up and to be able to keep you informed about what's going on a more general basis. Okay, what's that? That's 40 foot. Yeah, that's not too bad timing wise. Hopefully that was okay. These are my contact details. I'm all over LinkedIn all the time, so you can see me there. But if you want to send me an email, then please do. If you've got any questions, really happy to try and answer them now.
Hey, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. Maybe I could start with some questions, and then hopefully, if anybody else have further questions, could join us here in the discussion. I was wondering because you've shared a lot about the uh, tools assessment process and how to distinguish which tool is better than the other in terms of certain workflows or company, but how important are the personal skills? Because sometimes it's not up to the tool, but it's more about uh, how we can use it. And maybe here you could share more about any, I don't know, resources or like the idea here is which are the skills that we need to try to develop and where to focus because there are a lot of tools and you cannot
Yeah.
become an expert in each and every tool, but there are some principles that are involved in each and every tool. So maybe which are like the future skills that an architect or designer or engineer should definitely have.
Yeah, very, very good question. The answer is that, what's the answer? Well, in terms of a lot of these software companies spend a lot of time creating resources to help users understand the software. So most of the generative design tools will have at least a web page which has frequently asked questions, but ideally they would have like training documentation and manuals on there, wiki pages and things like that. I think that they also then create videos on YouTube, and probably that's the best way to digest information quickly and easily is via a video, isn't it? To say, okay, how do I do this? Here's a video to understand it. And Rayon has got some excellent training videos, as has Giraffe. They've got some great training information on their website. Snaptrude, I think, are building theirs at the moment. You know, so they're all kind of at various stages of that. But I think in terms of like um, skills more generally that architects should be aware of, I think a lot of the software that has been developed is very intuitive in how they work. They're very simple because they're aware that, you know, Revit is very heavy. It's quite a difficult program to use. It takes a while, definitely, to become a proficient user. Whereas with generative design, it's a lot simpler in terms of what it's doing. So it's simpler to pick up and start using it. And that's been designed in from the outset on purpose, particularly as they're web-based. They need to be quite simple, but they also know if they make something too complicated, if it doesn't work, people just go, I couldn't get it to work, so I stopped using it. And so it's in their interest to make it as simple as possible. But I think for architects more generally, we need to keep consistently upskilling over time. I don't think there's going to be a moment where we can go, okay, I've learned everything. I'll stop now for a couple of years, because everything is moving forward. Even Revit is actually incrementally moving forward slowly. And you know, there are new Revit plugins, there's new Dynamo scripts, there's new kind of developments with that, which you kind of need to keep up to date with. And it is incredibly hard. It is hard, but for some people, and I would assume a lot of the people who are at this call are like invested in Revit, interested in Revit, and therefore are interested in technology and other software. So that you're in the right place already, basically, that you're kind of doing this. The what I really like doing is going to conferences to see different software in use, and a there's a new conference coming up in November this year called Release AEC, and I just put this in the chat for you. Um, so
All right.
it's going to be very much about demoing software. From what I understand, it's not going to be a sort of trade show where you have a stand and it's just someone talking to you. It's going to be very much about going there to try software, see them in action, and really get your hands on with them. So if any of you are able to get to Paris in November, then it might be a really interesting event to come along to. There are some really excellent speakers at that. I am one of them, but I don't mean me. I mean, there's Tim Fu from Studio Tim Fu. His work's amazing. There's Ismail from Norman Foster's Foster and Partners office, and there's Stepan Milkovic as well speaking there, and they're all excellent, like pioneering what they're doing in the industry. So I'm not quite sure what I'm doing there, but I will be there and I'm going to enjoy it as much as possible. But that might be quite a fun one to get to if you're you know, Europe based, which I assume you all are.
Yeah, sounds logical. Okay. If someone else have questions, feel free just to ask right away. So any questions?
Uh, well, if anyone has any questions afterwards, super happy to answer anything. Just email me. I put my email in the chat just for your benefit. I'm here to help if I can. And
Ask.
yeah, if you're interested in moving across to Contech or anything like that, then yeah, reach out to me. Or if you want some of those resources I mentioned today, then I can I'll give you a link to the
Maybe we could put together I don't know, a single PDF file or something with the links that you've mentioned. So we we could share them with anybody who registered. So if there's any Any questions, or anybody could check um, the info that you shared?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can
Okay,
send you. Yeah,
sounds
let me
good.
send you something. That'd be a really good idea.
Yeah, I just send me something like a document, and I could pass it to anybody who registers. Yeah, sounds good.
Amazing. Really, really good. Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, okay. Okay. That's great. Really pleased. I hope it was helpful. Appreciate you being here. It's always nice to get people to turn up.
Yeah, thank you very much for participating and sharing all these amazing resources and information. I think was very insightful for all of us, and I hope in the future we could talk again.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. Okay. Appreciate it. Great to meet you. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.